The park was alive with activity that sunny afternoon, with families enjoying picnics, children laughing as they ran through the grass, and musicians playing soft tunes on their guitars. Among the crowd was James Carter, a tall, well-dressed black man in his late 30s. James was a local history professor, known for his eloquence and deep understanding of the social and cultural fabric of the country. He had come to the park to enjoy some fresh air and reflect on his upcoming lecture about the civil rights movement. James sat on a bench, reading a book, when he heard a commotion nearby. A woman in her 50s, with sharp features and an air of self-importance, was loudly berating a young black teenager who had accidentally bumped into her. Her voice, sharp and shrill, cut through the serene park ambiance like a knife. "Watch where you're going, boy," she snapped, her face twisted in anger. "People like you have no respect. Maybe you should go back to Africa if you can't learn basic manners." The teenager, visibly shaken, stammered an apology, but the woman's words continued to lash out. James closed his book, his brow furrowing. He had witnessed enough incidents like this to know that silence only enabled such behavior. Rising from the bench, he walked over to the scene, where a small crowd had already gathered, their expressions a mix of shock, discomfort, and curiosity. "Excuse me, ma'am," James said, his voice calm but firm. "Is there a problem here?" The woman turned to James, her eyes narrowing. "This young man bumped into me without so much as a proper apology, and people like you think you can just do whatever you want." James's jaw tightened, but his demeanor remained composed. "People like me," he repeated, his voice steady. "Do you mean individuals who value kindness and understanding over hostility?" The woman scoffed, crossing her arms. "Don't twist my words. All I'm saying is that if you can't respect our country and its customs, maybe you should go back to where you came from." The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a mix of disbelief and indignation. James took a deep breath, letting her words sink in, before he responded. "Ma'am," he began, his voice carrying a quiet strength, "let's take a moment to reflect on what you just said. You've told this young man, and by extension me, to go back to Africa. Let's unpack that, shall we?" The woman's face flushed, but she didn't interrupt. The crowd grew silent, sensing the gravity of what was about to unfold. "First," James continued, "let's consider history. My ancestors, like many Black Americans, were forcibly brought to this country centuries ago, enduring unimaginable suffering. They built much of the foundation on which this nation stands today. Their sweat, blood, and tears are woven into the very fabric of this land. So when you tell me, or this young man, to go back to Africa, you're ignoring the fact that this is our home, just as much as it is yours." The crowd nodded in agreement, their expressions somber. The woman shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. "Second," James continued, his voice growing stronger, "let's talk about respect. Respect isn't about skin color, accents, or cultural differences. It's about treating others with dignity, even when they make mistakes. This young man apologized for bumping into you, yet you chose to respond with hostility instead of grace. Is that the kind of respect you're advocating for?" The woman opened her mouth to speak, but quickly closed it as James held her gaze. Finally, he said, "I'd like to remind you and everyone here of the words etched into the heart of this nation: liberty and justice for all. That all includes people of every race, creed, and background. The moment we start dividing ourselves, we betray the very principles this country was built on." The park was silent, every eye fixed on James. The woman's face was a mix of embarrassment and frustration, but she didn't respond. James turned to the teenager, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You've done nothing wrong," he said gently. "Hold your head high and remember that your worth is not defined by someone else's ignorance." The teenager nodded, his eyes glistening with gratitude. The crowd erupted into applause, breaking the tension that had hung in the air. Several people stepped forward to shake James's hand, thanking him for standing up. The woman, realizing she had no support, muttered something under her breath and walked away quickly, her head down. As she left, James turned back to the crowd. "Moments like these," he said, "are opportunities to choose compassion over division. Let's not waste them." The applause grew louder, and James returned to his bench, his book forgotten for the time being. The teenager sat next to him, a shy smile on his face. "Thank you, sir," the boy said softly. James smiled warmly. "Anytime, son. Remember, standing up for what's right isn't always easy, but it's always worth it." As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the park returned to its lively rhythm. But for those who had witnessed the exchange, the day's events left an indelible mark, a powerful reminder of the importance of courage, unity, and standing against hate.